So really my whole approach is looking at how we can refine the way in which we show up in the face of any behavior our child might throw our way. So we have to be able to self-regulate and control ourselves so we don't operate and parent from reactivity and fear.
Hey there, and welcome to the Healthy Vibes podcast. Today I interview Louise Clarke, and this interview is filled with so much wisdom and goodness. She is a parenting expert. She has experience in mindfulness, self-care, and so much of a journey in parenthood with her 3 now teenage children. So thank you for being here and enjoy. Let's get started. Here we go.
All right, Louise, I appreciate you being here today. And thank you for being on the podcast with me today. I know that my listeners are going to get so much good information from you with your background, which I can't wait for you to tell me more about your background in parenting, the courses, the certifications you've taken. You have just such a wealth of knowledge in parenting, mindfulness, meditation. I could go on, but I just want to thank you for being here and let you start by telling me a little bit about your background.
Oh, Kelly, well, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure. And I love talking with anyone about parenting. And, people often ask me, how did I get into it? And I kind of stumbled into it when my eldest was 4, which is 15 years ago, and became part of a parenting group myself, which is still going on. So, a short way into that, the counselor that was coaching us recommended I did this. So, to cut a long story short, I took the various certifications and qualifications and things I needed to do to set myself up as a parent coach and mindfulness coach. And so now that is what I do. I work with parents one-on-one. I have my podcast, Parenting in the Thick of It, where there's 427 episodes now on everything
Wow.
parenting and everything in between. And I have a blog with a lot of blog posts on it. And I also have written a book called Parenting the Modern Teen, because I do have, I love parenting all kids and everything about parenting, but teens really float my boat. I love the teenage years. And so I decided to write an ebook on that, which I've sold thousands and thousands of those and have many courses. So I really have found my purpose, found my passion, and I'm so fortunate because all of it plays to me in my role as a mum with my 3 teenagers who are 15, 17, and 19. My work holds me accountable. Every time I give to parents and support them, in a funny way, it's giving and supporting myself and keeping me in the game, because just because I do what I do doesn't get me off anything scot-free, because I'm a mom, just like everyone listening. And my kids are kids, just like other kids. So they'll do things that'll trigger me. I'll do things that'll trigger them. And so, really, my whole approach is looking at how we can refine the way in which we show up in the face of any behavior our child might throw our way. So we have to be able to self regulate and control ourselves so we don't operate and parent from reactivity and fear. Because when we do that, we render ourselves completely redundant. We lose our shit all the time, and it doesn't serve to keep us connected with our kids. And when we lose the connection, we lose the capacity to lead, guide, and influence them in their lives. And we will actually prevent them from developing the life skills and core competencies that we want them to have. And so the whole thing really does come back to us and how we control ourselves. And we need to shine that spotlight of attention on us rather than looking always at the kid. What have you done wrong? What should you have done? You ought to have done that. Why didn't you do that? Look at us and say, what part have we played in this? And how can I turn it around? How can I bring about a change in their behavior through bringing about a change in mine? So that's really it in a nutshell.
Wow. Just that nutshell to me is worth the entire time that I'm going to spend with you, because I resonate with every bit of what you said right there. And I think I first of all hear your passion come from what you do, and I can tell you're doing exactly what you should be doing. And I think that's what drew me to you when I started reading your book and listening to your podcast. I related to it so well. And the work that I do helping moms, you take that the next step further, because so many of my friends and listeners, it's that reactivity. It's the reactions that throw us off in parenting.
Hmm.
So I can't wait to hear more about that. But so you have a 15, 17, and 19-year-old. And are those boys or girls?
A 15-year-old boy, 17-year-old girl, and 19-year-old boy.
Okay. So you have both and a little bit of each. And I would guess all of their personalities are different, would they? Or
Completely
completely?
different. You know, my husband and I look at each other and go, how is it possible for two of the same genetic codes to produce three vastly different little people? But, you know, every child's unique, every parent's unique, every person on this planet is unique. And, you know, it brings up a very good point, Kelly, because we often, when we're parenting, we parent them all the same.
Mm.
And we,
Oh,
in doing that, we lose sight of their uniqueness.
yes.
And, you know, if you just let's take homework, for example, because I know it's something that people are struggling with right now. We're recording this during COVID, and people
Right.
struggle with it, COVID or no COVID. But now, and I mean, you're the guru of homeschooling, so you'll understand this, and it will probably resonate with you. But, you know, for example, if we take homework and I share how I would interact with homework and my kids and the three of them and how different they are, I cannot possibly parent them the same way in terms of motivating them and inspiring them to do their work. My youngest is slightly more anxious. So if I was to say to him, come on, you got to get your homework done. You haven't done it. You're late. It was supposed to be handed in whenever. It would trigger more anxiety in him. And he would not do well with that kind of response
Right.
from me. Whereas I'm not saying that's the right quote unquote response and way to be, but I could actually deliver in that way to my eldest son. If I went, what are you doing? Come on, you got to get on with this. You're late. You're going to miss it. He would go, yeah, okay, no problem, mum. And he just is easygoing. He might not
Right.
do it, but it wouldn't bother him. If
Right.
I was to say that to my daughter, middle one, she would be like, really? You can't make me do anything. So so the way they respond to it, very different. So how do I give the three of them help? So if I gave the youngest one would take too much help, okay, because he doesn't trust himself to do it. My eldest would probably take enough. He would be able to gauge what help do I need? What can I do? And how can you help me? And he'd strike more of a balance. My middle doesn't want any help. So if I try and force my help on my middle, war, not going anywhere. If I try and help my youngest, he's inclined to take too much help because he doesn't feel capable. And if I did too much, I'd render him completely useless. And the eldest is more able to balance. Now, is that because he's balanced? Because he's older? I don't know. But can you
Right.
see if I was to just parent all three of them around homework the same way, it wouldn't work.
Oh no. And you're right. As a homeschool mom, I know these things, and I only have two kids. But you're right. For all kids, and I
Hmm.
love the looking at them in unique in who they are, because for so much in life, I feel like that's where I feel like our world, I struggle because of that. It's so easy to try and
Hmm.
put them in a spot. And honestly, you're in the thick of it, organizer in July. When you talk about expectations, it makes me think of that when we're talking about, who they are and what we're expecting of them. And
Yeah,
I loved your approach and so many things that you say in there. And honestly, when you talk about those three approaches to them, it makes me think of what we talked about in the beginning about how we react and our being emotional and taking things too personal. And I
totally.
find this from so many people I know and myself personally. But you talk about our energy zapping culprits and the little things that suck our energy, and it's so true when you look at it
Hmm.
that way, as it does that throughout the day or morning or whatever, and then all of a sudden you react. And what kind of advice, I guess, would you give, or what suggestions would you have for moms in terms of figuring out those energy zapping culprits so that you're not
Oh,
reacting or building up to that point, I guess?
oh yeah. I mean, that's
Big one.
a big one. Yeah, it's huge. It's
Yes.
kind of where do I start? In terms of how much we have in our tanks. What is our bandwidth? Have we enough bandwidth to deal with this right now? These are all questions we have to ask
Right.
ourselves in an ongoing way, to be in tune with, where am I at? How much have I got in my tank here? Is there enough in my tank to deal with this in a constructive way? Or have I got so little in my tank that no matter what happens, I'm going to lose my marbles with my kids here? We have
Right.
to really be all over that. And then we also have to continually, I call it the reactivity radar detector. We have to have a reactivity radar detector sweeping us all the time and looking for an increase in reactivity. So feeling, you can think about, how do you feel? Like, before you get reactive, how do you feel? What happens? Do you hear yourself raise your voice? Do you feel butterflies in your stomach? Does your heart race? Do you just get so frustrated you want to, like, you're going to blow a gasket? You have to recognize the feelings first. But actually, if you can even go a stage before that and recognize the thought that is driving the feelings that will drive the actions, if we can intervene at the thought level, then we're really gold, because thoughts create the feelings and the feelings create the action. So
Right.
if we are unaware of the thought, okay, we're okay. If we're unaware of the feeling, we're not good. It's not good, because then we react. The action is reactive. Whereas if in the moment I'm working with a child on homework, and in the moment I'm thinking, oh my God, if they don't do this, if they don't do that, they don't get this. And I am thinking these thoughts, it's going to instill fear in me. I'm going to act in fear. If I recognize that thought and go, okay, you're thinking your thoughts aren't true. Your thinking is taking you out of this moment right now with the child, and you're trying to help them with their homework. You're going to contaminate this moment and not be able to help them if you're not cognizant of what you're thinking, and that you're perhaps going into fear, and then it's going to cause you to react. So, in terms of being able to tame our reactivity, we need to have tremendous awareness for our minds. We need to mind our minds, and we need to know when the story is playing in our head. When you're a teenager, they're not going to do it now, but let's just say pre-COVID, they're late again. They've said they'll be home at 10:30, and now it's 11:15, and already the story's running in your head. Oh my goodness, he never comes home on time. He never listens to us. He's just so disrespectful. That's it. He's grounded. You've got the story running, and then he comes in the door and he's going, sorry, mom, sorry, I'm really late. You don't even hear him, because you're already in your story, you're reactive, and you're in your fight, flight, or freeze. You're in your limbic brain where you can't think straight, because now you're just going to fight. And you dump it on him, and you don't even know what happened. You don't even
Mm.
know his side of the story. And yes, he may have done it 20 times, but this next time might have been totally unavoidable for him, but you haven't heard him because you've been reactive. So we have to watch that story that's playing in our heads. I think that's the first place. And if you can't watch that, you have to really be attuned to how you're feeling. So when you're sitting there and it's 20 to 11, quarter to 11, and he's still not home, and 10 to 11, and you're feeling yourself get more and more pissed off, at that point, if he comes in the door, he's down before he's even opened the door,
Mm-hmm.
because you're moving into reactivity. So to halt it, you have to backtrack and become really good at feeling your feelings and knowing where you are, and trying to actually even get the precursor to that, which is the thought that drives the feeling.
That is that I can relate to that, and not, I mean, no, he's not coming home in a car yet, but I could go through so many other different stories and relate
Hmm.
to exactly what you said. And there's so many different ways I could go from this with you. But I do know, and you said awareness, right, when I was thinking about it, because I know in so much of your information, I've crossed that part of you talking about our awareness as well, which it's in your book. Listened in one of your podcasts, just being aware, which is so big, but it goes to, and I want to go to another one where you talked about the pausing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, again, there's so many ways we can, and and that's why your coaching is so valuable and all that you do is so valuable, your courses. But the pausing, um, and being more patient rather than pushing, I guess, is what I'm thinking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
both of those, being aware, um, and finding how we don't create that story. And I'm not sure where to go with this. Where would you say next to talk about becoming more aware or mindful?
Yeah,
How
we
we
can we
practice
can
that?
talk about both, and I think it's a key piece, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I can certainly attribute my raised awareness to Dr. Shefali Sabari, who is
I
Oprah's
love her.
favorite parenting. She's Oprah's favorite parenting expert, and she is amazing. And I've done all her courses. I've worked with her for years, and I remember asking her on a course, okay, so if awareness is so key, how do you become aware? And she looked at me and smiled. She went, by being aware. And I'm like, no, 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 you've got, she went, by being aware, by being
Right.
aware. You can only be aware by being aware. And she also goes on to say, she says, ignorance is bliss and awareness is a bitch. Because once you're aware, you can't be unaware. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're aware, you wake up to a whole load of things that are like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize because we were asleep, we were unconscious, we were
Yes.
unaware. So once you actually develop some awareness through being aware, and there is a way to strengthen your awareness, but once you develop it, there's no going back. But trust me, once you have it, the path forward is infinitely better, more connected, more meaningful, more mindful, and you get more energy. You were talking about energy earlier, and how do you not lose energy? This is how you don't lose energy. Because when you're unaware of all that's going on and your part to play in it, you don't realize how zapping that is of energy. It's like giving a bleeding patient a blood transfusion, it goes in and straight out. And when we are unaware, it doesn't matter what we do. We can go for the manicure, go for the pedicure, go for our walk, connect with nature, do our yoga, do your journal. It'll come in, but if you're not aware of where your drains are, it's all going to go out. So if you're not good with your boundaries, not good with the limits, if every time your kid pushes back, you lose your ship with them, you're going to drain yourself of energy. So the awareness piece is huge. And we strengthen our awareness through becoming more aware. And how do we become more aware? That's where meditation comes in.
Yes.
Because, there's all ways of uh, describing meditation. What is it? How do you do it? Why do you do it? Where do you do it? And people are like, well, they're actually, people don't know what it is and why you do it. And in the simplest terms, meditation is like taking your awareness to the gym for a strength workout. Because in a meditative practice, and it doesn't matter whether you're on a TM meditation, on your breath, in a walk, eating, in that practice, you are able to be fully in the moment. And if you're meditating on your breath and you've got your eyes closed in what we would call a more typical meditation posture, you're taking out your visual field, which means your brain's not picking up on what you're seeing, because what you're seeing might create thoughts. So the meditation practice allows you to watch your mind. And when you watch your mind, you become aware of how often your mind thinks. And it thinks 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day.
Mm.
But we're unaware of most of them. But when you become more aware, you become more aware of your thoughts. So in a meditation practice, you're really going within to the stillness, to the essence, to the your core, and sitting in that space, and you're watching what happens. And when you first start, you start realizing how active your mind is, that it's like a puppy that won't sit still. It needs to be trained. And the meditation process trains you to sit in the stillness and simply watch your thoughts, observe them, Witness them without attaching to them. I'm not saying in meditation you try and stop your thoughts. That's not the goal. The goal is to raise awareness of your mind, so you know your mind's going to think. You can't stop your mind thinking. It's a thinking machine. But you can actively and intentionally decide to not go with the thought and come back to your breath, to enter this stillness. So you can see now that you're creating a space where you can observe with no judgment and train your mind to be in the present moment, on your breath, nowhere else, just here. And the thoughts come and go, but you don't attach. It's like watching clouds moving on the sky, but you're still focused on the blue. You don't see the cloud. But when you go to the cloud, you get taken away from the blue. So it's a similar thing. So, raising our awareness is huge. And that's why in my life, for the last, it must be 6 years now. I keep saying 5 but then it's years since I've said that. I've been meditating twice a day, morning and evening. And I have noticed with that all the benefits that you can Google. Google the benefits of meditation. I experience them all. But the biggest one for me is being able to watch my reactivity in the moment with my kids. Because we train in meditation, I'm training, and we're hoping that awareness then spills into moments where you're not actually meditating, but you're in the moment. I'm aware, oh my God, my mind has gone on a complete journey here, all around the fact my teenager just was rude to me. And now I'm aware in the moment, in real time, that my thoughts have gone. I've attached to my thoughts and I'm going down the fear path, which will force me to feel a certain way and act a certain way. So the awareness piece is huge, and the meditation is the key to unlocking it and strengthening it, I believe.
And that's so powerful. I would agree with you, and I like the way you described it, because I think sometimes people see the word meditation, they almost like shy away from, or
Yeah,
I
well,
think
they
they
think
think
hippies, brown bread and leather sandals, sitting
right,
on a mat somewhere, and it's not possible. That's great, but that's not what we're talking about here. And there's a
right,
big difference between the meditation and the mindfulness, and mindfulness is a buzzword as well. People are like, "Oh, I'm being mindful." You can't be mindful without awareness, because being mindful is being open to the present moment as it unfolds, each moment, new moment, new moment, being open to it with no judgment, with curiosity, and with kindness, so that you watch this moment unfold and you're a witness to the moment without your judgment, which comes from the thought. So if you're unaware, it's very hard to be mindful, because you're not aware of the fact you're not in the moment. And for
right,
50% of our waking hours, we are not, our minds are not where we are. In other words, we're here, but our minds are elsewhere. That's why we can drive to a place and have no clue how we got there.
exactly. And I believe in this world. I think I'm always telling people, because I think all of what you're saying is so good. But when you catch a mom, like, some of them, I can't get them just to slow down and just to have even a few minutes just to listen, or try to have quiet time. Or I
Hmm.
find with some moms, I have to say, listen, your goal this week is just to find 5 or 10 minutes where you're not doing anything else.
Hmm.
It's like it is so hard for them just to slow down in this world and just stop for a minute or
Yeah.
pause, even
And has
before you can get to the next.
COVID
Yeah,
ever been a gift to us, to give us that? And
and
that's,
it's
so many people are so deeply uncomfortable. And I'm not taking away from the gravity of the situation that the world's found themselves in, or found ourselves in. However, if we look at what it's done to us, it's actually given us the opportunity to slow down, to really take a good look at what is our life, what is the purpose here. I've been running around like a chicken with its head cut off and being unaware of it, and now I'm not. It's uncomfortable for people,
I know
right?
it
I'm not
really
talking about the,
is
the fear of it, but just being
being calm.
forced to slow down is
Yes,
so foreign to so
So
many people
foreign.
today because we run around in this fast-paced, digital, ever-changing, busy, scheduled, over-programmed life that we've become used to. And they're like, I can't wait till it goes back to normal. I don't want it to go back to normal. What was normal anyway? Was normal really what you want? Because most people are saying, I'm just so busy. I got to slow down, but I just can't. I've got to take this one here and that one there. But they're not making the change. They're not doing anything to slow themselves down. And I kept saying to myself, something's going to happen that's going to slow us down and we won't like it.
I completely agree with you. I I completely agree with you. And I think you have to find, and that's where I said with a lot of people that, you know, we're so frustrated. It's just the acceptance of here's where we are. So what can you find that's good in this? And I
Hmm.
agree. I'm not minimizing what's going on, but I do believe there's possibility to slow down and find, what was just passing us by. I mean,
Absolutely.
it was passing us by, and just being aware, like you said, and mindful of the moments. I do believe, and I've learned over the last few years, I would say it's like a practice. And I think you said it somewhere, just strengthening that mindfulness, strengthening that being aware.
Hmm.
It takes time and practice. And when you say you meditate twice a day, I'm just curious, how long do you meditate for? And do you have a certain program, or what, something that you use?
I I don't. But I did. When I first started, I did have, I would use guided meditations because I think it's very hard to start. I don't think it's impossible, but it's quite hard to start. And I was actually really good with myself about not trying to sit for too long when I was a novice to it. Because a minute seems like a long time when you've never done it before.
Right.
And so what I do now is quite different to what I did then, but the advice I would give to people is to start gradually. You know, I don't advise that people say, okay, I'm going to start meditating, never done it before. I'm going to sit for 15 minutes every morning
Oh goodness,
or every
right.
night. There's a few people that could do that, but more often than not, we're not that great at holding onto things. Like we'll start strong on day one, great, two, great, 3 day, four, great. And then we start falling off the wagon. So I recommend that people find a time in their day that they could add 2 or 3 minutes to something they do anyway every day. So I always say brushing your teeth. So when you brush your teeth, just know it's actually going to take you 5 minutes for a month. It's going to take you 5 minutes to brush your teeth for a month. You're going to brush your teeth for 2 minutes. Most of the electric toothbrushes have a timer, but you're going to put the toothbrush down and you're going to sit on the side of the bath or sit in the toilet seat and meditate for 3 minutes. And you can have your phone, you can find a little timer or a bell or something, and you could do the guided one for 3 minutes. But that's how I would start. So you're attaching it to something you do religiously anyway. Then you're going to give yourself half a chance of actually continuing this. And then when you start developing that practice, it takes 21 days to for something to become habit. Even then, it's very easy to fall off the wagon.
Hmm.
Is to just add on to it. Find the meditations you enjoy. Find the ones where you can sit still for longer periods of time. You'll find something that you flow with naturally, and then it will become you let it become your own practice. So you said, how long do I meditate for? I I don't fight it. Sometimes I'll meditate and I'm done in 5 minutes because my mind was too active. I couldn't slow it down, and I'm absolutely fine with it. I don't beat myself up and go, well, I'm hopeless. I'm never doing this again because I couldn't quieten my mind. I just go, no, you know what? My mind's so active right now. It's winning. So I'm not going to go too long today. Other times I come out my practice and it's 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But I would say regularly it's 15 to 20. And I do it when I wake up because I wake up every morning. And I make sure I actually usually wake up before my alarm, but I have my alarm set with about a half hour buffer before I need to or have to do anything. And then when I go to bed at night, I do the same thing. I get into bed, but I do not meditate to fall asleep. I meditate to increase my awareness. And I do it as I get into bed, just as a practice. And then I might read my book. One of my kids might come in. One of, my husband will come to bed. But that's my routine. But it's not meditate light out or lights out meditate. It's into bed, sit there and do my practice. And sometimes, pre-COVID, I'd be out in the car waiting to pick the kids up from something. And I would often go and pick up my phone and go, nope, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to meditate. And I meditate on my breath. I only need my breath. It doesn't matter where I am. I always have my breath. As long as I'm alive in this world, I have my breath. So I can meditate in the car, in my bed, at my desk, in the garden, on a beach, on a mountain. And that's why I like using my breath. I don't need a special cushion, pillow, feather, incense, candle, nothing. There's no quiet corner. I find if I was to do that, I wouldn't go to it.
Right.
Because I'd be like, oh, I've got to go and do it. So find a place where you can do it. So one day you might do it at your desk. One day it might be in the car. But when you're starting, make it the same place every day. Sitting on the toilet after you've brushed your teeth, sitting on the side of the bath, sitting on the bath mat. Brush your teeth, go sit on a chair in your bedroom. Go sit. I'm saying bedroom, bathroom because you're usually on your own. You go into the family room, the kids might be up, someone might be up earlier, it's going to distract you. And start that way and start small and take it from there.
I like that. I'm a big promoter of everything starting small because I think the simpler, the smaller, the easier it is to just start if you can just get people to start. And I like that in our conversation of, how to be better with our kids, we've circled a little bit back. We've circled back to being, more aware and really self-care and taking care of yourself and taking time for yourself, which I'm guessing would you say that's the one of the most important parts of your self-care is the meditating, or do you have
Hands
other
down.
things?
Hands down, absolutely. It is the pillar of my self-care. And it's the one thing that allows me to show up less reactive and in control of myself. So I don't lose my shit in the face of whatever they do. Because whatever they do will change. You don't know what it might be. You might be stuck in one particular pattern, a fight over the same thing all the time with a child. But so you might get that sorted out, but there'll be something else that will show its face. Whereas with the meditation, it's working on you to tame your reactivity, to take you into that quiet space so you can find your pause, practice your pause, know what your pause is in the moment so that you can in the moment go, I just need a minute here. I'm watching myself get reactive, just need a minute. So the meditation helps that. Other self-care things that I do, nature's huge for me. It really is. It's enormous. I'm not a journaler, although that is a very, very popular way to for self-care with many people. One of the other biggest things that I say for my self-care, and it's one that not many people think about, is being good with saying no. And as mums, you might be listening thinking, what does she mean saying no? That's a bit selfish. She says no all the time. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are certain things as mums we continue to say yes to when we know we should be saying no to. And if you want to zap yourself of energy, it's that. When you're going, no, 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 yes, okay, just this one time, energy, whoosh, gone, because you've let go of your boundary. You've not protected what you value. You started out by saying no, but you've relinquished and said yes. It's not a good place to find ourselves as mums. We find ourselves feeling walked over, disrespected, not heard, doormat. So being kind with your no to yourself and being kind with your no to others. When someone says to you, "Oh, do you mind baking a cake for the cake sale this week?" And you're like, "Yes, sure." And then you're thinking, "Why did I say yes? I've got a birthday, I've got my mum's birthday, I'm baking that cake. I've got something else where I'm doing this." And all you're going to do is run yourself into the ground for the sake of saying, "I'm really sorry, I can't bake a cake for your cake sale."
Right.
Because there'll be other times when you can. But if we keep saying yes to things, that are really not a top priority for us. Now, the bake sale might be. I'm not knocking the bake sale, but
I
I'm
hear
just
you.
you know what I'm saying here.
I
We do.
do.
We say yes to things that we should be
Oh, we
saying no
do.
to, and we say no to things we should be saying yes to. You know, we pick the wrong battles at home. Sometimes we say no and think, oh God, why did I say that? Would have been far easier to just say yes, sure, go do it and deal with it. So
Absolutely.
that's a big part of self-care for me. Boundaries are huge in your self-care practice.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I would say exactly what you just explained. I think it's extremely uncomfortable for mothers to start the process of saying no to things. But I
Hmm.
always tell people, you start with something small, start with one thing. And I think just like the awareness we talked about or anything else, it's a practice. You start strengthening your ability to say no,
Hmm.
and I think it gets easier and you get better at it, and then you
For sure.
realize what you're opening up, because you have to take care of those things, so that and
Absolutely.
that helps as well with your reactivity.
Yeah. And the
I
other
love.
big one, sorry, I just thought of, I
No,
mean, just thought
absolutely.
of one. It's not that I just thought about it, but is not taking your children's behavior personally.
Mm,
That is huge for self-care, because when
yes.
we take our children's behavior personally, we absolutely render ourselves incapable of responding. When we take it personally, we have to react because we then have to defend. And that drains us of our energy. And not taking their behavior personally, and with mums with toddlers might be going, well, why am I would don't take it personally. Trust me, you just need to have a teenager in the house and you learn pretty quickly. If you take what they say and do personally, you are
Yes.
you are on your back. You're on your back. You're down. You're shot.
Hmm.
So you have to not take it personally so that you can stay in your wise brain, in your higher order brain, and you're using your prefrontal cortex, and not take yourself into that limbic fight, flight, or freeze. Because when we're there, it's very, very draining of our energy. It takes a lot of energy to fight people, to flee, to freeze. It drains us of energy. Whereas when we actually can stay in our higher order thinking brain and think about it, it's not half as exhausting. And it does not mean your kids are getting away with it if you don't enter the argument, if you don't take it personally. In fact, I actually go as far as saying, if we take it personally and we dial into the drama, your kids are getting away with it because they've started the argument and they're getting away with continuing the argument. Whereas most people think that the kids are getting away with it if you don't argue. But it takes two to argue, and they're wanting to argue. They're throwing you the carrot. They're dangling that rope. They're put on their gloves and they're ready to. They need someone to vent, and so they say something, and we think, oh, if we don't deal with it and react, they're going to get away with it. But what we end up doing is we react and enter the argument, and they totally get away with it because when we're in the argument, we can't do anything other than react.
And this is so common, even when we strengthen our awareness and our mindfulness and all of the things we talked about. I still think, like you said, with teenagers especially, because you never know what comes out. and
You have no idea.
and every time, and I do know personally, when I'm taking better care of myself, when I'm rested, all of these things, I don't take things as personal.
Yep.
But I'm sure there's moms listening that are still thinking, well, that's easy to say. Like, what,
Yeah.
is there any just, and I was just actually listening to one of your podcasts about this. Besides the self care and the taking care of ourselves and all of those things, is there any just practical tip in that moment to not, let that, just light us up and take it personal? Is there anything, I don't know, that you go to?
Again, it's awareness, Kelly. It's the awareness. You have to be aware that you're actually beginning to take it personally. So is take a pause. You know, every time your teenager says something or does something, I'm giving teenagers a bad rap here, but your toddler or something,
No, yes.
someone said something to you and you're feeling like put out. Just notice that feeling. I'm feeling put out now. My typical pattern is to react to it. How about I take a pause and not react to it and see what happens? Stay curious, be open, witness it rather than join it. Observe it, watch what happens. Because trust me, not a lot can happen if it takes two people to argue. So if someone's argumentative, there's nothing more annoying when you're feeling like an argument and there's no one to argue with.
Right.
So your teenager's wanting the argument, or your toddler's wanting to push you and control you. You enter it, you and you it goes nowhere. But if you don't enter it, they're not controlling anybody because they're not controlling you. If you don't argue, you're not entering the argument. So it is the awareness, but maybe a mantra you can say in your head that entering the drama will fuel the drama. If you don't
Absolutely.
want drama and you don't want the argument, you don't want the control fight with them, don't enter it.
Don't enter it.
Don't enter it and see what
And
happens.
and I love that I almost feel like you have to say it like again and say it slowly, because I think some people, again, like we said, are in their busyness, they're in their whatever, they just to be open. You keep saying that, be open and be
Yeah,
curious.
yeah,
And I think sometimes that can just like pass right by and no one really heard. But being open to something, to trying something else,
yeah,
and being curious to see what happens, because I think we're stuck in like a hamster wheel. Some of my people I talk to, and I'm just like, pause and be open to the fact that if you don't react, it could, and it probably will turn out differently.
yeah. And we have to listen. So when you're in that moment and you listen to your child, ask yourself, why are they behaving like this? Listen. We spend so much time interrupting our kids' rant,
Mm-hmm.
interrupting generally, and we listen to interrupt, and we really are not, I'm generalizing here, but generally we're not that great at listening. And I think if we
No.
actually start to listen to our kids, we listen to them and hear them ranting, hear them being rude and disrespectful, and be thinking, here's the openness, I wonder what's going on for them. I've really not provoked this, but yet they seem they seem rattled, they seem flustered. My toddler seems out of sorts. Yeah, he's done it every day, but what's going on? Why? Why does he feel the need to always say, I want the orange sippy cup when you give them the blue? To say, no, I don't want ketchup after you've put it on the hot dog. Why is this? And listen rather than react. So if you
Right.
can think, listen in the moment, not react, take a pause, take a breath. If it's really bad, just say, you know what, I'm dying to go to the loo, I'll be back. Just remove yourself, go to the toilet, come back. The buffer, you've given yourself a space. Sometimes that can help.
And I love that, listening, because especially in this time that we're in, and I do love the humor that I see, and I think humor's good. But I do think sometimes, like, we haven't really thought what the kids are feeling. Everyone else has been,
Hmm.
life has been, and it is. I know it's hard when you come home and you're working from home and all this is going on, but deep down, these kids, even if they're not saying it, are feeling anxious as well. And you saying, listen, it's such a good thing to just stop and say, hey, how are you feeling today? Is there something else? Because I think they feel things and they don't even know how to express them
For sure. And
without
I
us
think,
giving them that chance.
yeah, and I think there's many parents listening who might be thinking, well, this is all well and good. I've got to listen. My teenager's being rude. I've got to not be reactive when they come home late. Sorry, this sounds very like they're just going to get away with it to me. There are times where you entering the argument is you not entering it is all that's needed. And you just don't take it personally, move on. They don't mean what they say. They've just summings up, they've had a rant. There are definitely times where you have to circle back. So take the teenage boy coming home late at night. The last place you ever want to try and come up with a consequence or to help them learn from their mistake is in the heat of the moment, especially at night when it's late. So say, you know what, you're home, that's great. You're safe. Let's talk about it in the morning. So give yourself time to sleep on it. And that, because it's late, it seems obvious. Yeah, I totally get that. But that's actually what we need to do every time, is give yourself a chance to sleep on it. Now, I'm not saying you go to bed and have to wait always to the next day, but give yourself a minute to sleep on it during the day. Take, maybe half an hour later, maybe an hour later. If something really has come out of their rant and you need to say, listen, I've calmed down, you've calmed down, you circle back, say, what's going on? This is unacceptable. It's not acceptable to speak to me like this. So you're opening the dialogue outside of the drama. That everyone's calmed down. So you circle back and then work out, what's going on. And then you can deal with it when they're less triggered. If you haven't got triggered and you've stayed in a responsive way, you can support them through theirs. But if anybody's triggered, whatever you say will fall on deaf ears. If you're triggered, you can't say anything that's going to make any sense. It'll be illogical, and it will coming from fight, flight, or fear. So circle back. I'm not saying just let it all go and forget about it and pretend it didn't happen. Intentionally circle back on certain things to make sure your child learns the lesson. There may have to be consequences. I can't, whatever's happened, there might well have to be consequences, not punishments, but consequences, so they can learn from their mistakes. And then in order for that to see through, we have to be consistent. So every time there's X, Y happens.
I like that, consequences, not punishment. I do like that, because I feel like that's how you learn, when you feel that there's a consequence to what you did, not that I am punishing you for what you
Mm-hmm.
did.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
and for
like
the consequence to be a consequence and not punish, is it's a useful thing to think about, is because this actually is another podcast in itself, but
right,
just very quickly, um, the consequence needs to be, think about all the letters, the letter R. The consequence needs to be related and relevant to whatever happened. In other words, you came home late, you came home half an hour late. Next time you go out, you have to come home half an hour early. So that is related, relevant. It's totally reasonable. A consequence does not have to be so severe at all. It just needs to be reasonable and logical to them. Relevant, related, reasonable, reliable. It's easy to do. You can make sure they're home half an hour early, even if it means you pick them up. And it has to be respectful, done respectfully. Collaborate when you're coming up with them. Ask your kids. Ask the teenager, what do you think the next morning? What do you think should happen, Jack? You came home half an hour late. You were half an hour late home the other night. What are we going to do here? Ask them. See what they say.
I like
Oh,
that.
mom, I think, and they're usually very tough on themselves. Oh, mom, I think I should be grounded. Personally, I'm not a fan of grounding, because I think how long do you ground for? Is there a recipe book for grounding that says if they are home late 15 minutes, the grounding is X? If it's half an hour, the grounding changes to Y. And is there anything that says if you ground them for a week, it means they'll never do it again?
Right,
There's
right,
nothing that proves that. So make it reasonable, make it reliable, relevant, respectful, and you're going to help them learn from the mistake, and they will feel, it's totally reasonable, makes sense. Whereas, you're home half an hour late, you're grounded for a month. That makes no sense to a teenager. They're going to be pissed off, resentful. They will probably lie and say they're going to go to someone's for a sleepover because there's a party and they know they can't go because they're grounded from parties.
right.
So we have to be really careful that our behaviors and our reactions and what we dish out in the moment, it can backfire on us, and it can cause it ends up the kids don't learn anything, because punishments bypass the lesson. They just instill in kids them to be manipulative and struggle to tell the truth, because who's going to come clean if you know you're going to be punished and grounded if you make a mistake?
Right,
Whereas a kid that actually can still go to the next party but has to come home early, they're pissed off. They don't want to leave the party, but they have a choice. You can go for 2 hours rather than 3. That's totally reasonable. Why should they not go
mm-hmm.
at all just because they were late? I mean, I'm just opening the listeners' minds to really thinking about what are my consequences for my kids, and do I then say this is the consequence, but I don't see it through, so it's not reliable. Because if there's no consistency, it falls flat.
Which is true. And I feel like I could go back to your book on some of that too. But I know that I have taken so much of your time. And before I end this, because your book talks about the consistency and the boundaries, and that was such a big thing I got from your book, that I wasn't staying consistent, and I could see where it was coming. It was becoming worse of a problem because of what I was not doing.
Hmm.
And so, your book, first of all, can you tell us the title? Because I want to talk real quick before we wrap it up. I want you to tell us about your book, a little bit about your podcast, and some of your courses. Just really quick. I
Okay,
know, what is the title of your
so
book, and what does it
my book.
mostly cover?
Okay, my book is called Parenting the Modern Teen, and it is all based on what I've been discussing here, what we can do to change the way in which we are showing up, what we can do to tame our reactivity, to raise our awareness, so that we can be present and mindful with our kids and help them learn and instill in them the life skills and core competencies we want them to develop. Right. So that's really the foundation of my book. In the work I do when I'm working with parents one on one, I go deep into the triggers and deep into the patterns and the conditionings, because I truly believe to really turn it round and be able to show up non-reactive, we have to do what I've discussed here on the with you, but we also have to look at the triggers. We have to look at where they are, what they are, because they're always internal. They're never external. And so to not to ignore them is almost band-aiding things. It's two-piece. We have to deal with our triggers and our patterns and why they're there and how we show up with the way we do. And that will influence how we show up and our reactivity. But in the moment we also have to have a few tools and things to watch our reactivity and be able to tame it in the face of the behavior. So there's almost like prep work and then in the moment work. So that's what I really work on. That's why the coaching process is so transformational,
I
because
believe that.
that is really the basis to change, is working on our own triggers.
Right.
Um, and then my podcast is a bit of everything: toddlers, teens, everything in between, on whatever kind of tickles my fancy in the moment. I don't. They're raw. They're vulnerable. I don't script them. I don't have notes. I think of a title. I've got two titles written on my notebook right now. Um, so I'll talk to that. One's actually on chores and finances and allowing our kids to make financial mistakes with their savings. I've never talked about that, so that's going to be the next one. But that's as much as I know about it. So I will hit record and start talking. So it's on everything, and they're 10 to 15 minutes, so they don't take a long time to listen to. So they're
I
quick.
love that.
You grab them here and there. Um, and what else did you ask me about?
I've
Sorry, where
listened.
they come from?
I want to. I just want to say, on your podcast, I've so enjoyed them because of exactly what you said. There's so many different topics, and they're short. They're just, you can listen and you grab just a little bit of a practical tip to go away with, or practical
Yeah.
something simple that just, they fill you up. I enjoy
Oh,
them. And
thank
then,
you.
your courses is the other thing, because I was on
Oh,
your website and they all look so good. Do you
yeah.
have?
So my website's yourparentingpartner.com, and everything
Okay.
about me and finding anything, everything I do is listed along the tabs on the top of my website. My courses, I have a course that you can do with the book, the Modern Teen Accelerator course, which activates the learnings in the book. It takes it just to a slightly deeper level. And then I have three kind of what I call my full-on courses. Tech and Teens is my most popular one, because there's not a parent who doesn't struggle with technology in their teens. I have a course called Sex, Drugs, Rap and Roll in Teens, because right now the teens aren't going out and drinking and vaping and doing drugs. But when they do, it's a challenge as to how you manage that when they come home. So that whole course is on how to stay connected with your teen in the face of those kind of experimental behaviors that they will do, that we're, scares the living Jesus out of us, but they'll do it, how to manage that. And then the other one is called conflict to cooperation, which is all about how to set boundaries, hold limits, and deal with the pushback. And so that course is actually, it really is pivotal and foundational to being able to parent well. Because if you can't set the boundaries and hold the limits, you're not going to deal with the tech. And if you can't set the boundaries and hold the limits and deal with the pushback, you ain't going to deal with a hammered or stoned teenager very well, or a teenager that wants to go to another party for the fifth night in a row. So the boundaries and limits are really key. So those are my four courses that I have.
So much good information. And you're right. I find that some of these small things, I always say, this is not going to get easier, because as they get older, the issues are going to get more complex and harder. So I feel like you've covered so many good things with all of your resources. I've loved talking to you, and I feel like I could keep talking to you, but I know that I have to let you stop at some point and get back to your teenagers. So
yeah, well, actually, I've got a client in 7 minutes, so I do need to hop off. But yeah,
thank you, Louise.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Kelly. Really has been enjoyable. Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing this time with me today. I am grateful you are here. And if you have anyone that you feel could also benefit from this encouragement, please share it with them today. You can also add a quick review on iTunes, which would mean the world to me and help me just to make this better for each and every one of you out there. I will be here each week, so please be sure to subscribe to the podcast or join me at kellyrenato.com to get the latest episode and more tools to help you on your journey to feel your best and enjoy every single day exactly where you are. I would love to have you join my journey, and let's all add good, healthy vibes anywhere we can, every single day. Enjoy your week and embrace the season you're in, and I look forward to next week. Take care. Bye-bye.